welcome to APTCast, where a panel of Aptum experts come together to talk about topics that matter most to our clients in the industrial, commercial, government, and energy markets. Today, we're going to be talking about the Sustainable Sport Index, specifically the second annual benchmarking report, which you can download for free at sustainablesportindex.com. It's going to be up there. Before we dig in on the actual content, I want to do a little bit of introductions because that's what polite people do. In the spirit of sports, I'm going to ask everybody to not only introduce themselves, but also to share their personal, most proud athletic achievement to date. So get excited, guys. Hope you have some good ones. So I'll kick us off in the spirit of fairness. Monica Tilgis, I'm Director of Sustainability here at Aptum. And I had the pleasure of helping to make sure that the vision of Sustainable Sport Index came to fruition. So my personal favorite athletic achievement was in high school. I really peaked early. Sorry, Tammy, college coach. I came in third place at the world's largest cross-country meet a long time ago.
That's awesome.
The Princeton Invitational in Minnesota. Kind of a big deal.
Nice.
I do have hardware to show for it.
Excellent.
All right, Meredith, your turn.
Yeah, my name is Meredith McCurdy. I am the Marketing Strategy Director for Sustainable Sport Index. My background is more in the sports marketing, sports business space, and so I'm excited to help raise the profile of the Sustainable Sport Index within the sports industry. Unlike you, I just peaked in my athletic accomplishments at the Transplant Games of America, which you might say, what is that?
Yeah.
So Transplant Games are a multi-sport event, kind of like the Olympics for transplant organ recipients and living donors, and I am a living liver donor.
Excellent.
So this was my first year. I got 2 gold and a silver.
Yes.
And she saved lives.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
Right.
At least one.
There's that in my spare time. I give spare parts.
There you go. My name is Greg Kaufman. I am a Senior Vice President with Aptum. I am responsible for our environmental and energy solutions business unit. I'm out of Kansas City. And my proudest moment, I'm going to cheat a little bit.
Yes.
Mine is my children's.
Now it's cheating.
All 3 children competed in lots of different sports to fairly high levels, and it was so awesome watching them compete. That was my proudest moment. So there you go.
Super cool.
I heard rumors that you were a wrestler. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, tempted.
I love it.
So,
All right, well, let's dig in. So first, Meredith, could you kick us off by giving us an overview on what SSI is? Sorry, we call it SSI. Sometimes we're going to slip in. Sustainable Sport Index actually is, and how it's a little bit different from what else is out there in the industry.
Yep. So like you mentioned, it's the second annual of the Sustainable Sport Index survey and benchmarking report. And unlike some of our peer publications, we don't award a certification, a ranking, other awards along those lines. And instead, we're trying to encourage professional, collegiate, and minor league venues and teams to participate in this survey, where then we analyze the anonymized and aggregated data to try to give a benchmark, kind of a state of the industry, and what it looks like in environmental and social sustainability right now.
Very cool. And how many participants did you get this year?
Yeah, so we were excited. We have 25 participants this year, which is a 25% increase over the first year. That's 24 professional venues, and we have 1 collegiate venue. Kind of an interesting fun fact is that kind of those 24 professional venues actually represent 18% of the professional venues in North America. So it's actually a pretty big sample size across a variety of professional sports as well. We've got 10 different sports leagues that are represented among those venues.
And how do you actually develop the report? You mentioned a survey.
Yeah. So the survey is it's free to participate and voluntary. We ask the venues to complete what they can. So some of the questions are more data heavy, and not all venues have that type of information. So all of the questions are voluntary to share what they have and what they can. It covers energy, waste, water, transportation, as well as some social sustainability side of diversity, equity, inclusion, inclusive accommodations for fans as well. We took some feedback from last year's survey, added a little bit in the energy space, added a bit more about other fan zones, such as parking lots and tailgate areas. And then to give back, we also wanted to give more content back. So not just an analysis of what came in, but a bit of a playbook on how to how to get a venue's footprint closer to zero. I think we'll chat about that a little later. And something that's kind of really interesting to me is what's the business case for sustainability, right? I come from kind of that sports business side. So you know,
and I thought that was a cool part of the report, that it wasn't just about regurgitating data back that the folks put in their surveys. It was some analysis. It was some perspective of, well, how does that mean, or what's going on, not just in their venue, but in the industry. So I thought it was a real good tool in the end, from start to end, to help them understand not only where do I sit or where could I be, but wow, the case studies and things that were in there gave them a sense of, okay, it is real. It could be done. And if we put forth the effort and the energy, we could get there. So I thought that part was great, and adding that in there as well.
Awesome. And that really brings us to the next question is, so what value is Aptum bringing to this equation, right? Because typically this type of thing is done by nonprofits or small boutique firms. So Aptum is a sizable for-profit business. What are we bringing to the table?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we sat back a couple of years ago and looked at our growth areas, one of the things that we've got is a very successful retail practice, and we do a lot of environmental consulting, sustainability efforts, working with those clients. And we looked at growth. Natural extensions got to, sports venues, conference event centers, and hospitality. And the common theme is a lot of these are pillars of these communities. And when you look at these events and they've got a great opportunity to influence a lot of people in those communities. And when you throw in then sustainability, wow, they can make a difference. And so we looked at the market, and man, there weren't a lot of opportunities to get data, to see, wow, where are these folks in their journey? Where are they at? What are they doing? And so, SSI Sports Index here helped us to kind of get some research and kind of see where people are. And wow, what we're starting to learn is it's not unlike a lot of the things that we've done for retail. And then so a lot of the services and a lot of the things that we've offered for those great clients, we know we can bring available to those sports venues. And not to mention, like you said, we're all sports fans. Yeah. Who hasn't walked into a sports venue, whether it's a city park or your collegiate facility, and your head's turning around saying, hey, that's there, and look at the waste they're diverting, and look at the cool things they could be doing. So it's hard for us to turn off, as you said, that sustainability nerd brain that we have in order to watch the sports event. So it's kind of cool.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I think we're all nerds.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that Aptum can bring, is that we have that deep bench of those experts that nonprofit organizations may not have access to. So we can help accelerate it that way. Awesome. Okay, so Meredith, 2 years, right? So what have we learned? What are we getting smarter on? And when you think about the 2022 report, what really stands out to you as the key takeaways?
Yeah, I think there were a few kind of year-over-year things that we could look at. One that's really interesting is what we've started to coin the compost conundrum. And we found that venues, 78% now are using compostable serviceware, which was an increase from the previous year. Where we found this kind of inconsistency, though, is that only 38% of those venues who have sustainable serviceware have the appropriate compost waste bin to help fans know where to put things. And we know there's an increasing trend of doing kind of back of house sorting, which makes a lot of sense. However, I think part of the best practice is helping fans to make the connection between a compostable product and the correct waste bin and where it goes. And they may be unnecessarily contaminating the other waste streams, whether it be recycle or landfill. And I think it's also messaging, it's fan engagement, right? This is a big piece where fans want to know that it's going from point A of the compost and actually being composted. So fan behaviors, fan education. So even if on the back end it's being disposed of appropriately, I think the visibility of that whole cycle is important.
And it wasn't a completely shocking statistic, because you have to start with, I got to bring in the compostable foodware and those things, get that process going. But we are seeing the challenge of, well, okay, I got that done. The next part may not be as simple, hence the conundrum of, okay, well, how do I teach my patrons that are coming into the facility, the fan base? Do I have a service provider that can take it? Where is it going to go? Those are a little harder questions for folks to get their arms around. And hence, we're seeing that gap, that significant gap between the two. Why is one so simple to get done or easier to get done and the other lagging behind?
Yeah. And I think the report has a lot of these kinds of best practices of this is the direction we would encourage a venue to go.
Yeah.
And Monica, you were a huge contributor in the playbook to get your venue closer to zero. If you want to give us kind of a highlight of that from the nerdery.
Thank you, nerdery. I feel like I need that on a t-shirt. So there's no one size fits all solution, right? I think that's just something we all have to kind of own. Every venue, every client has their own unique circumstances, their own priorities. So we can't be prescriptive about this. But there are some general truths that rise to the surface. So I think we look at it in terms of like a 4-step process or hierarchy in which you should consider or potentially prioritize your upgrade. So first is optimize, right? So you have equipment already installed in your venue. You don't need to replace everything. Fix the leaks in your irrigation system. Yeah. Do some retro commissioning on your network lighting controls, right? Make sure that what you have in place is running as efficiently as possible. And that can be relatively low cost, and you can really get really quick payback usually on those types of measures. Once you've kind of done that, achieve that low-hanging fruit, then really it's looking at potentially upgrading, right? So like one of the things that is kind of classic at this point is LED lighting, right? Get rid of your metal halides, just say goodbye. It's time to move on. Your payback in LEDs is roughly 4 minutes, so it's worth, I'm exaggerating. It's worth making that investment and really reaping the rewards of that. And then the next step is really to looking where you can either kind of produce or reuse, and I'll focus on the production. So the obvious one on the energy side, because again, at my core, energy nerd, is put solar panels on your facility, on your parking structures, so that you can start becoming more independent, reduce your carbon footprint, and help on your pathway towards zero. And then finally, it's going to be really difficult to get all the way down to zero, right? That's a very challenging thing to do right now as things evolve. That story may change, but today, this is a difficult thing to do. So look to offset renewable energy credits or purchasing carbon offsets to help reduce your footprint further. But that's really kind of the last step. Yeah. It's really, because you'll reap those longer term rewards if you focus on your facility.
Yep.
Okay. I think what you mentioned a few times in there too is the payback period of some of these investments. Which is really important quantitative data to look at making these sustainability improvements. Yep. And I think looking even bigger picture at how do we talk to the sports industry about the business case for sustainability? Mm-hmm. And I think there's a few things that we uncovered in the survey as well that were some of the barriers to entry and some of the benefits. And some of the barriers were, kind of a lack of executive support. There was a lack of human resource. We have, there's also a question about how many venues have a dedicated sustainability person, and it's quite low. I believe it's around 24%. So what we were also trying to do is highlight the things that are those business cases. How do we say that it's also good for business, not just good for the planet and people? And we looked at one area, sponsorship, which is close to my heart. That's my background, is in the sponsorship space. And, we're seeing more and more initiatives in the sustainability space from sponsors. So one thing in the survey was 48% of the venues have had an increase in sponsorship revenue related to their sustainability programs. We're also seeing sponsors like Footprint Center, like Climate Pledge Arena, put their names on these venues as either categories of sustainable services or products, or other kind of non-endemic to the sustainability space, working on sustainability activation programs. Yep. So
it is very difficult. You talk to executives, whether it's sports venues, retail, hospitality, whatever. This is the biggest challenge. There's some metrics are easy to directly measure. You mentioned energy savings. That's a direct thing I can measure, and it reduces my energy bill. But yet, okay, if I installed an EV charger and it made a fan more desired to want to come to the facility, that's harder to measure. Did I sell more tickets as a result of doing this? So hence the challenge of how do you convince leadership that this is something that you should invest in, you'll get the return on that. But it usually comes down to, as you said, I get sponsors to help support the organization and the venue, or I get more people to come attend. And those are difficult things, but some are having success and being able to draw those connections. And you're seeing society put more pressures on, hey, when I go to these venues, these are things that I would expect to see. So these are things that you can all kind of put your arms around, but it's venue by venue. You got to look at what drives and motivates that specific venue, and that may be totally different than the next one, or a different league, or a different type of facility. So,
and sports fans are no more or less likely to make purchasing decisions or be passionate about sustainability, but I think that's exactly it, right?
Yeah.
They are no more or less, and we are seeing the trend across all different consumer product sectors, that consumers are being driven by some of these bigger environmental and social sustainability issues and challenges.
Yep.
So one of my personal favorite things about this report is that it's really written to be beneficial for facility operators and stadium managers. What do you, is this just a white paper out in the ether, or are people actually using it and making changes as a result?
So we got feedback from last year's, the original inaugural report, that some venues were making changes as a result of the report. The individual participants also receive a customized confidential report that benchmarks their responses to the aggregate, and makes some analysis, some basic interpretation, a mini gap analysis of where they are compared to the rest of the industry. And some of last year's respondents said that they took that forward into prioritizing how they would tackle things next.
There's not a client I've met or talked with, including Aptum, who doesn't want to see how they stack up against their peers. I recently got to go to an NBA event venue, and that was one of the first things they said. Their ownership is constantly looking at what are the others doing, and when they see an article being published or a report that they did something, they immediately come racing down and say, what did they just do? Should I be doing that? Is that something we should be looking at? So being able to give this information out in a way at which they can see, okay, I understand my data, right? They'll get your confidential report, or even somebody who didn't participate this year and may want to participate next year, they can still see that public-facing report and understand, okay, where's our data against this? You know, this is good information to let us know, are we behind, are we in front, or where are we needing to be? Because in the end, there may be competition on the field, but the reality is there's competition in those communities for fans, for people to pay attention, for sponsorship dollars, and they're not going to want to be left behind. They're going to want to see where they are in that competition.
And there's eyes on it that are also starting to expand to be more global.
Yeah.
So the United States will host the FIFA World Cup in 2026, along with Mexico and Canada. And the LA 2028 Olympics are coming as well. And so, you know, that the eyes of the world are also going to start to be on the U.S., Mexico, and Canada for these events, as we see already. You know, World Cup is coming up, and the buzz around sustainability, both environmental and social, is out there.
Yeah, especially when some of those countries are further along maybe than the U.S. is. So when those eyes get looked internal, it'll be, you know, an opportunity for, okay, how do we stack up against worldwide venues?
Yeah. We also are starting to see talent and personalities come out making demands. So Billie Eilish, for example, a musician, in her rider, which is kind of the demands that an artist makes when they come to a venue, includes no single-use plastics. So it'll be interesting to see if that starts to happen. That's a trend in entertainment. Yeah. Could that start to happen in sport, as we see the NFL, for example, do more international games, the NBA as well, going out internationally. So it could be interesting to see if the U.S. also takes those intentions abroad.
Great point.
And those venues, the sports venues, are also hosting artists like Billie Eilish, so it's kind of pushing it in the sports world, because some of these musicians are helping to push that envelope. Yeah, very cool. So evolving space, right? Like this is, it's dynamic, and there are a lot of different kind of variables impacting and driving it forward. With that, we're going to have to continue to evolve Sustainable Sport Index, right? And we mentioned asking for feedback and receiving some that help us to really inform this year's report. What are we looking forward to next year? How are we looking to evolve it going forward?
I think we want to hear certainly from our respondents and participants, as well as looking at partnerships with potentially Green Sports Alliance, with a lot of the major leagues to understand what are some of their priorities. And so how can we help to gather information that will inform what they'd like to do going forward?
Awesome. And how will Aptum's role shape in that?
Like I mentioned earlier, we've got a lot of history with doing environmental compliance, sustainable activities and services. We want to be there to offer, to say if they want to improve their benchmark against everyone else, if they want to tackle a waste solution or they want to improve their water, conservation, we'll be able to help and be able to support them as they need to make those steps in that journey. The other thing we're seeing too is a lot of environmental regulations are being passed by local cities and municipalities on diverting waste from landfill, on looking at water crisis in America. So there's a lot of rules. This isn't necessarily just a volunteer thing in some cases anymore. It's a requirement that you have to meet these rules and these diversions and recycling metrics. So those are a lot of things that we can help them understand what their options are. Look at their ROI, look at their risk, and make good decisions on, okay, where do we want to go in this journey, and how fast we want to get there, and how far do we want to go in that journey. So a lot of good opportunities.
Very cool. And so Aptum not only supports the development of the survey and the report, but we've also been doing some assessments for some of our venues, right? Actually on site. So the survey is self-reported and it's asking specific questions, but we're actually sending some folks on site to some of these venues and really looking to see at their built environment where their opportunities lie and helping to give them really customized guidance. What kind? I know, Greg, you were at one of these. What were some of your big takeaways from those?
The big thing is a lot of times you can walk by something 10 times a day and not understand. Oh man, I didn't know that. So it's helping them, give them a perspective they may not have when they deal with it on a day in and day out basis. That's number one. Number two is bringing them industry best practices and say, hey, just down the road or across the state or in the next state over, or another type of a client has done this, or we know that this technology exists or this solution is out there, bringing them those ideas, because a lot of times those folks feel like they're on an island. They may not have the connections to other places or other things to be able to do this. They've got to run a building. They've got an event to plan for. They got a sports activity that's coming up tomorrow night. They're more worried about the ticket sales going to happen, or there's a lot of other things on their day job. So walking through some of these venues, it's letting them know, there's solutions out there. You're not alone. You're not on an island. There's a lot of things that you can do. It's helped to reinforce some of their data. Help them to understand, well, their data says this, but here's some things that could help you capture that data, analyze that data, manage that data better. But it's just giving them a peace of mind. Many of them, and we just talked about barriers, some of them just wanted an independent voice to come in and say, well, I've been telling my leadership this every day. Maybe they'll listen to you. Maybe they'll listen to an outside party that can bring that perspective to us and then give us a piece of advice of how do we get past where we are stuck. So, very cool exercise, very cool being able to walk through real quick and help them point out, hey, here's 2 or 3 really quick things you could do and some solutions to get you there.
Awesome. Any parting thoughts, guys?
Download the report.
Yeah. SustainableSportIndex.com. It's free. It's free, and there's a lot of gems in there. As we talked about, it's not just some stats, it's also some best practices that aren't just applicable to sports venues. They really are broadly applicable.
And send us feedback.
Yes, I was just going to say, that's absolutely how we get this better and how we help, these folks that are participating. And those that didn't participate, there's still opportunity to take a look at the report. Get in contact with us. We'll be doing this again next year. But it's still opportunity to take a look at this, look at your data, and you can kind of on the side compare your data to it. But at least get involved. Download the information and ask questions.
Greg and Meredith, thank you so much for throwing down all those magnificent pearls of wisdom for us today.
Right back at you.
Very excited about this new report. And for those of you listening, again, SustainableSportIndex.com. Get your free report today. Aptum is an industry leader with headquarters in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and more than 4,000 teammates worldwide. We specialize in environmental services, resiliency, sustainability, and energy solutions, as well as technical and data solutions, program management, and critical infrastructure. Come back next month for more Aptum Pearls of Wisdom. In the meantime, please subscribe to APTCast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Thank you.